Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Fresh off of our latest mini-series, we are now back with our regularly scheduled programming, and boy, do we have a lot to cover. I mean, since we have last met, the fishing world has gone crazy for Coikes, and I can't wait for it to end. We have a review on the brand new Ark Gravity BFS Avid BFS reel. We talk best summertime largemouth baits in this week's fishing poll, and we open up the mailbag to answer some of your overdue fishing questions. All that and more on this episode of Tackle Talk.
Hello, everybody. I'm Bill Dance, and you're listening to Tackle Talk.
This is the Tackle Talk Podcast, brought to you by The Rod Locker. Premium gear and expert advice from a staff you can trust. Now, here's your host, Andrew Hayes.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Tackle Talk Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We have an awesome show for you. I feel like this might be one of those really long episodes since we haven't had a regular episode in the past 4 weeks here because of our latest mini-series. But before we dive into all of that, we have to give a big tip of the hat to the folks that make the Tackle Talk Podcast possible, the Rod Locker. And it was so awesome seeing everybody that came out to last month's customer appreciation event at the Rod Locker. It was great meeting you guys. Thank you so much for making the trip to the shop to come say hey and hang out. I got to tell you guys, if you live anywhere near Evansville, Indiana, you are so lucky to have the Rod Locker near you. I would kill to have that tackle shop in or around Dayton, Ohio. They've done such a great job of building stock in items that you actually want. They have a great rod and reel selection. They have a ton of baits, Megabass, Palooza, everything from your big name USA brand stuff to JDM and everything in between. And as always, their selection of used rods and reels was incredible to see in person. So I couldn't help myself. I walked out that day with some new and some used stuff. A lot of stuff that looked at me from the wall with puppy dog eyes and said, please, Andrew, take me home. So I left with some new gear, and I know a lot of you guys did too. So thank you all. Now, the good news is if you're not anywhere near Evansville, Indiana, that's what the internet is for. So the Rod Locker not only has an incredible selection of gear that you can look at in person, but it's all uploaded to the website so it can be shipped to your door in a few short days. So go check out everything they have to offer. They're incredible folks, amazing deals and sales, fast shipping, great customer service, just everything you would want from a go-to tackle shop. So you can head over to www.rodlocker.com. And as always, you can use our coupon code to save even more money. So on Tuesday, when you're listening to this, that code is still going to be Tackle Talk June. But tomorrow, Wednesday, it switches over to Tackle Talk July since the month changes. So Tackle Talk June, all one word, or Tackle Talk July, all one word, depending on when you're listening to this, saves you an extra 5% off your order just for listening to Tackle Talk. So again, that is www.rodlocker.com and code Tackle Talk June or Tackle Talk July. Okay, everybody. So like I said in the intro, we are back. And first off, I have to just give a big thank you to everybody for your kind words and your feedback from our latest mini project, The Big Four. That series was a ton of fun to put together, and I do think it achieved what I wanted it to, which was to provide you all with kind of a behind-the-scenes look at the big dogs that are often maligned or vilified, especially online. And it's unfortunately kind of cool to take subtle or not so subtle digs at big tackle. And look, I get it. There's a lot about the shrinking of the fishing industry that I don't like, and I've been extremely vocal about that on the show in the past. I don't hide that or sugarcoat it, and there are certainly drawbacks to the consolidation of fishing companies. But, and here's the big capital B-U-T, it's also important to take a step back and recognize that whether we want to admit it or not, there are also good things that these companies are doing and good people that are running them or are heavily involved with these big companies. So I just think two things can be true at once. Are the giants in the fishing world, the big four, are they angels? No, they're not. But are they the devil? Are they evil? Are they the source of all of our problems that we make them out to be sometimes? No, I don't think they're that either. They're chock full of great people who care, making great products, making things more affordable, making things more available. And I hope that those 4 episodes were able to show some of you that. So thank you. The emails, the messages, everything we got from those 4 episodes were awesome. There were some common themes that we heard in those messages, like, man, I really didn't think I was going to like this, but after I listened to it, so-and-so really won me over a little bit. I definitely learned a lot and look at these companies a little bit differently after this series. That right there is all I hoped for. I enjoy having my beliefs or what I think challenged sometimes, and that's kind of what I wanted to do with that series, was to peel back the curtain and give you a look into those companies that you don't often get. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the Big Four. Again, thank you so much for all of the kind feedback on all of that. Okay, next up here in our announcements, I have some exciting news for you all. You guys have asked for these for literally 2 years now, and we finally got them in. We have an official restock of the Tackle Talk Retro Smalley Snapback hats. So just like last time, again, I think it was like 2 years ago, the last time that we dropped some of these, I have a very limited number of them, and we will be doing a merch drop next week on Tuesday, July 7th at noon Eastern. Those hats will go live on our website Tuesday, July 7th at noon Eastern. So that means whatever it is, 11 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Mountain Time, 9 a.m. West Coast, but noon Eastern, we will drop the limited number that we have of Tackle Talk Retro Smalley Snapback hats live on the website. So if you've never seen these hats before, they are far and away the most popular merchandise item we've ever done here at Tackle Talk. When we dropped these a few years ago, they sold out so fast, and I had one more quick order of them. Those sold out really fast, and we haven't had any since. So it's kind of a big deal that they're coming back. So these are the hats that you see me wearing in like my recent, social media pictures. If you head over to my personal Instagram and just to see the fish that I actually catch, at Haze Fishing, HAZE Fishing on Instagram, you'll see the hat that I'm talking about. It's sort of like a light, almost army green front of that hat with a tan back. It's got a snapback on it. It's got a custom Tackle Talk kind of rectangle patch on the front. It has a cool image of a smallmouth that I made, and it just kind of sort of has that retro tackle shop vibe to it. So like always, I will include a signed card with every order. I will include a handwritten thank you note. That's just what we do here at Tackle Talk. I want to make it personal and thank each and every one of you that supports this show and helps us do what we do. And the other cool part is they ship straight from my little studio here. So these are not drop ship hats. They don't, come from some random warehouse where I never get to lay eyes on them. They come straight from me. I'm looking at them to my right now. They are on the shelf, literally, 2 feet over to my right. So when you order one, I will package it up and I will mail it out myself. There's no middleman here, so I can ensure that it looks great because I get to inspect every hat before I actually send it out. So you guys have been asking for these at every expo, every show that we do. So I'm pumped that they're finally back. Again, for a limited time, a limited number of these Tackle Talk Retro Smalley Snapbacks will drop on our website, tackletalkpodcast.com. You can click store at the top of the page and you can head over and it'll take you to our shop page where you can see them. Those are going to drop next Tuesday, July 7th at noon Eastern. So mark your calendars and I will remind you on next week's episode as well. Okay, next up here, let me tell you what I don't want to talk about today. I don't want to talk about urchin baits. Thank goodness that we had a 4-part series planned for the last month of shows, because holy moly, has the fishing world absolutely beat into oblivion the urchin bait craze. Everything, and I mean everything on the internet is Coike this, urchin that, the best way to rig Coikes, 5 great alternative urchin baits, and then there's like the 10 urchin bait tips that will help you catch more fish. It's just urchin palooza. And I don't know about you guys, but I am full blown sick of it already. I'm done. I'm tapped out. I want to opt out of urchin bait content, at least for the time being. And this is what the fishing world does. Something gets very popular and everyone has to abandon all self-worth and dignity and originality and immediately hop on the craze with both feet first to get those clicks and those views with everybody else that's cashing in at the same time. The fishing world has a shortage of original ideas a lot of times, and we see that in bait designs all the time, but we also see it in media and content and, online influencers and things like that. Every YouTuber, every pro, every company has just sold out to this urchin bait craze and caved because it's where the clicks are right now. And I just can't do it. So I hope that's okay with you guys. I do not want to talk about urchin baits today. And if this bait sticks around and continues to be a player in another 6 months or a year or 2 years, then okay. Now it's a bona fide tactic that might have some staying power, but there's also a very good chance that this becomes the next dice bait. You guys remember those? You remember dice baits? You remember those fuzzy baits? The things that every company at ICAST last year tried to shove down our throats? Fuzzy dice, fuzzy nuggets, fuzzy balls, those type of things. Remember when every YouTube video and every pro was talking about fuzzy baits and dice? Yeah, I do too, because I'm more than a year old. And it's almost like once the next shiny object came along, we realized that the fuzzy baits weren't exactly the game-changing class of baits that they told us they were. So color me a little skeptical when a new trend comes around that everybody has a vested interest in pumping and hyping up all at the same time. Because, I mean, think about it. Anglers work for sponsors. Media companies work for sponsors. Sponsors, those people that they're working for, literally are in business to sell you baits. And I guess I'm just going to leave it there because I can already feel a rant starting to come on, and I just kind of need to take a deep breath for a minute and move on, because I know that this is going to come up again in a few short weeks at ICAST. And I have some thoughts that will probably make it into that episode, because at that point, I probably won't be able to help myself anymore. But the Coike craze, the great urchin era of 2026, I'm just tapped out. I don't want to talk about them. There are quite literally 10 bajillion other videos and podcasts that you can listen to if you want to feed your demand for urchin content, I guess. Okay, so let's pivot here then. Let's go from something that we don't love here, which is kicking the dead horse of the latest trends over and over again, to something that we do like to do here, which is thoughtful product reviews. And today, this might be a surprise to some of you, but I'm going to swallow my pride and we're going to review a BFS reel. Yes, noted skeptic, and some might even call a hater, I guess, of BFS, Andrew Hayes, is going to give you an honest review of the brand new BFS reel that came out that I've been using for the past probably month or two, and it's the Ark Gravity BFS Avid. Now, if you remember, a few months ago, we actually teased this reel on the show, specifically because of its price point. And I said at the time, I said, hey, I want this reel to be great because it was at that $99 price point and it looked like a promising entry to kind of lower mid-level BFS reel that most people could actually afford. And you guys know that one of my biggest lines in the sand here when it comes to pricing of gear is that $100 price point. I think anything that can stay under that magic number, so $99 and under, is in a very special place right now. As more and more gear that used to be under $100 shoots up to like $110, $120, $130 or more, that $99 price point is a magic thing. And I was excited when I saw that Ark debuted a BFS reel that hit that mark. So I said to you guys at the time, I said, I will try to get my hands on one of these, use it to the point that I feel comfortable giving a review, and then I will report back. And today we have that review. So let's start with the basics. This is going to be a little long here, but I always try and give the product its due from what the company says about the product before we get into our own thoughts. So I want to let Ark kind of speak here for a second. So Ark themselves say, the all-new Gravity Avid reel is built on the Gravity BFS reel, but with a simplified gravity control brake LT system. It's perfect for beginners or anglers looking to get into finesse fishing on a bait casting platform. The Gravity Avid comes equipped with the GCS LT brake system for smooth, easy control. Then it lists some features here, so I'll kind of skim through these really fast. It says, ultra lightweight design constructed with carbon fiber frame and side plates. The reel weighs only 5.5 ounces, reducing fatigue and enhancing balance on BFS rods. It has a shallow 28 millimeter spool that is optimized for light line and micro lures, allowing faster startup, longer casts, and improved accuracy. The spool sits on a short shaft and micro bearings to allow easier startup rotation for casting light lures. The total weight is 3.52 grams, it looks like, for that spool. The floating cast shaft here, it says that floating cast shaft is fully disengaged from the gear side during casting. This reduces vibration, adds casting stability, and greatly increases casting distance. It's got a cone-shaped line guide. The taper line guide ring effectively reduces frictional resistance. on the line, therefore greatly improving casting distance. It does have a little note here about the GCS LT braking system, which it says provides consistent control and easy adjustment to prevent backlashes and casting ultralight baits. High precision bearings features 6+1 stainless steel bearings for smooth operation and 2 micro bearings supporting the spool that allow easier startup rotation. This enables casting of lighter lures and requires less power to cast, reducing fatigue for extended fishing periods. It has a smooth, consistent drag. It says here, the carbon fiber drag system delivers up to 11 pounds of drag, offering dependable stopping power without sacrificing finesse. It says it has a 100 millimeter handle paired with TPE knobs to ensure comfort, control, and confident retrieves during long sessions. And then a hyper smooth transmission. The main gears are precision forged to bring you smoothest reel available today. I think that probably should say the smoothest reel available today. We reduced weight and vibration by as much as 50%. So your quick hits on the specs here, I guess, would be your gear ratio is 8:1. Your weight, it said, was 5.5 ounces. Your spool diameter is 28 millimeter. Your line capacity is going to be 55 yards of fluorocarbon at 6-pound line. You get 28 inches per turn. You get 6+1 bearings, 11 pounds of max drag, and comes in a right or left-handed retrieve. Okay, so there is a lot to unpack there. So let's start with some of the basics. Obviously, the 28 millimeter spool, it is a shallow spool capacity, which is expected with a BFS reel. 6+1 bearings is okay. 8:1 gear ratio gives you 28 inches per turn, and it said it weighs in at 5.5 ounces, 11 pounds of max drag. Those are your basics on the rundown. So as we roll through those specs individually, the max drag at 11 pounds is actually pretty good. It might not sound like a lot, but for reference, the $235 Shimano Corrado BFS only has 8 pounds of drag. So your drag in like a BFS situation, at least the way that I would use it while I'm out fishing, is more about the smoothness of the drag versus its max drag power. That max drag is just how strong it is when it's locked down to the maximum stopping power that it has. But with BFS and like micro lures and, you're probably not using over 10-pound line, that max drag is plenty. I mean, if you remember that you're using very light lines, so say you're using 8-pound braid or something, which is kind of what's recommended is somewhere around that, probably 6 to 10-pound line. If I'm using 8-pound line at 11 pounds of max drag, theoretically, your 8-pound line should fail before that 11-pound max drag slips. So it's just kind of pointless to have a BFS reel, you're using 8-pound line on, have 20 pounds of max drag. It's overkill. You don't need it. 11 pounds is plenty. Now, the real test, like I said, though, is how smooth is that drag when it pulls out? Because unlike traditional bait casters, I don't have my BFS reel locked down. I have that drag set so that drag will pull when it's needed, kind of like I do with a spinning reel. I kind of set those fairly similar because when you think about it, with BFS, I'm throwing light baits on light line and a light rod, and I treat that more like a spinning reel than I do a bait caster in terms of setting my drag to the appropriate amount. So the drag itself, right out of the box, it does have like a clicking drag star and a clicking drag itself, similar to a spinning reel. So you can hear when that drag is being pulled out. I do like that for a finesse reel because I want that audible indicator. I want to be able to hear my drag on a spinning reel. And I guess in turn, I want to feel and hear that same thing on a finesse bait caster. So audible drag is a plus in my book. And then if we get to how it feels in the hand, overall weight, 5.5 ounces actually isn't bad at all. But what's crazy is because I never trust the listed weights on reels, I actually weigh them all myself, is that I weighed this reel with line because I like to weigh my reels with line because that's how you're actually going to use them. You're going to have line on it. That is its kind of usable weight to me, is a reel that actually has the line already spooled up on it. And with line on this reel, it weighed 5.43 ounces. And that is, again, after being spooled up with 10-pound braid. So at least my reel and my scale that I use for everything, and I've tested multiple times, this reel actually comes in lighter than it's listed on the box. It's listed at 5.5 ounces on the box. It weighed 5.43 with line on it when I measured it myself. So that was something that I thought was kind of interesting. Now, the thing you have to watch with inexpensive reels is that light isn't always better, because a lot of times cheaper parts are lighter. So if you have a $500 reel and it's light, that is a feat because they're packing premium components and getting that weight down at the same time. With cheaper reels, there's a lot of plastic, a lot of cheaper components, and that can contribute to a lighter overall reel. So you just have to be careful a little bit. But it's very interesting that this reel is actually lighter than it's listed on the box. And with that 5.43 ounce usable weight on my Tatula BFS rod that I put it on, that balance point is kind of right where your index finger would be when you're holding that rod normally, like up and down, which felt pretty good to me, both on like a rod tip up and rod tip down technique in terms of like palming this reel and having that balance be the way that I wanted it. It balanced pretty well. Now, if we want some reference to how light this reel actually is, the Corrado BFS is 6.2 ounces. The Cast King Zephyr is 5.6 ounces. I mean, if you want to go to like the $300, whatever it is, Daiwa PX BF 70, that is a 5.6 ounce reel. So this Ark BF Avid is technically lighter than all three of those reels, even though it's only like a fraction of an ounce in some cases, but it's at a fraction of the price too. So you have to weigh those things together. So overall weight is great, especially at your price point. And like I said, I paired this up with a Tatula XT BFS rod, which was $99. And it's a 6'5" light. So a pretty small light rod, and the reel paired just fine. It does palm really easy. It does have that asymmetrical design that contours around your hand versus more of like a symmetrical kind of boxy frame, which is something I kind of have a love-hate relationship with because I'm just used to symmetrical frames. That's every reel that basically I've ever had growing up was way more symmetrical than this reel is. It kind of starts to remind me of some of the Abu Garcia reels that are out currently as well. They sort of have a similar feel to them, but ergonomically, it does feel pretty nice in your hand. It's just going to be a little different because again, that swoop where your index finger sits like kind of right in front of the worm shaft when you're palming this reel does curve with your hand a little bit more than being a little bit boxier and straight out. So drag, weight, ergonomics all get a passing grade from me for all three of those. So at least on paper, when you look at it, spec-wise, this is a rock-solid offering from Ark. Now, the real feedback, though, happens when you take it out on the water and you actually use it, get this reel dirty, beat it up a little bit, and put it through the paces. So the first pro here I think I'm going to give this is casting distance. I'm going to give this reel a thumbs up on casting distance. Now, again, I should preface by saying I am no BFS master, so I don't know how far I should be able to cast BFS baits on this setup, but to me, I was pretty impressed with how far I could fling some pretty small baits. Now, do I think I could cast farther than my Corrado BFS I had a few years ago and played around with? No, I don't think I could probably cast further than that, but it was pretty darn close. And if you would A versus B them, I would guess that this would be a pretty serviceable distance compared to that reel for the price that you're paying when you keep that in mind. If you want some hard and fast numbers, the other day I was out casting a 1/8 ounce jig head with a little grub on it, and I had the brakes dialed back to about 1/2 to 3/4 off. So engaged about, I'd say 25 to 50%, depending on what I was messing with at the time. And I was casting that jig head like 115.5 feet. From what I measured from where I was standing to where my casts were landing and casting relatively normally, I thought that was pretty good casting distance at a regular full cast. So over 115 feet with a 1/8 ounce jig head, pretty solid in my book. Again, I am no BFS guru, but I was pretty happy with how far I was able to cast. Now, honestly, I'm not throwing much less than a 1/8 ounce. I'm not one of those guys that's out taking, BFS gear that's measured in grams and like ultra micro stuff. 1/8 ounce is probably the smallest regular bait that I'm using at any time. Maybe like a 1/16 ounce ball head or something if I'm getting real crazy in certain situations or I'm crappie fishing or something. But I went with normal weights, 1/8 ounce and up, and was doing pretty well. Same thing with like casting at short distances. I went out and flipped with this a lot, trying to hit precise casts. And I think when I actually tried to hit the same thing over and over again from like 20 to 30 feet away and just flipping like normal, I would say, 90 to 95% of the time, I was able to land that bait within like what I would call margin of error. So within like maybe a foot or a foot and a half of what I was aiming for. I thought it was pretty good. So both on like bomb casts and on short, precise casts, I had no issues with this, especially once you play around with it and you dial in the braking. So casting very lightweights, by my standard anyway, was pleasant enough. I have no gripes with its ability to do its job. I also thought it was a relatively smooth reel for the price when there's not a fish on, if that makes sense. When that reel is not under stress, when you're just casting and retrieving, it's got a pretty smooth operation. But like every piece of gear, there are going to be things that aren't perfect or that you aren't a fan of, and we have to talk about those too. So let's start with the drag, because out on the water, when fighting a fish on light line, drag is so important. Like I said earlier in this episode, it's about how smooth that drag actually pulls out and how did it perform when it was being stressed and there was a fish on. And actual performance, it was fine. Like I don't feel like I lost any fish or had any detrimental experiences with that drag. But I do have to tell you, I don't like the way it feels when it's pulling. Like I'm going to do my best to explain this, and I'm sure this is not going to land right. But when drag peels out of like a spinning reel, for instance, you know how it goes kind of like, like as it's pulling. I can't make the sound, but you know what I mean, right? And it's got those like little clicks that you hear when the line pulls out, ever so slightly. You hear that next click. That distance between clicks that I'm used to is very, very small, right? It does not take a lot of force to get to that next click. Well, on this Ark Gravity BF Avid, it feels like it requires more line to be pulled to hit that next tick compared to some other reels that I've owned with audible drag. So the distance between clicks seems to be longer, and it makes me feel like there's a little bit of, jumpiness or kind of like a little bit of a clunky feeling when that drag is being deployed. So I think the actual power of the drag is fine, but the gaps in between those little clicks and ticks are just too long for my liking, and it makes that drag feel less smooth. I hope that makes sense. I don't really know any other way to explain it. When you pull out the drag on this, you'll kind of notice it too when you do it for the first time. The next gripe that I kind of have, and this is a silly one, but it's something that I wish reels would do more, and this doesn't just go for this Ark Gravity BF Avid, this is for a lot of reels in general, but this was one that I noticed it on quite a bit. I wish when you have the outside magnetic brakes that they all had numbers on them so that when I'm dialing those brakes in that, on this lure, it felt great at 6.5 or 8.5 or 2 or 5. When you have something like this Ark Gravity BF Avid that just has dash marks that don't have any sort of like noticeable indicator, it's really hard to dial back in when you switch baits to what felt comfortable with that bait before. So I just wish for like future reference, when you're switching your brakes around a lot and you're adjusting lure to lure, I wish that there was a number system on there so I could just remember, when I'm throwing the Karashi, I liked it at a 7. Or when I'm throwing this, 1/8 ounce grub, I liked it at a 2. I just feel like it would be very helpful to have number system to know where you are at any given time versus just looking at it almost like it's on a clock face and trying to remember what direction it was pointed. Little stuff like that could go a long way. I also feel like under stress, when I had a fish on, this reel just felt a tad bit underpowered. And maybe that's going to happen with all BFS gear. Again, I am by no means a BFS expert, so this could just be my like traditional bait caster brain showing here. And if so, I apologize. But I felt like, again, setting aside the fact that I certainly feel like my rod was underpowered in a lot of situations because I'm used to a traditional casting rod or using a spinning rod in most of these situations I was putting this setup through. Maybe it's just because like on a spinning rod, your rod and the eyelets are actually pulling up on your line, and your line is doing a lot of the work. On a casting rod, the rod is below the eyelets, and you're just kind of holding the line up from below. I don't really know how to explain that either, but they're two very different things. I feel more comfortable with a light spinning rod in that situation than I do with a light casting rod. But, to each their own. But I do feel like it was a bit underpowered. It was fun throwing the bait. It was fun working the bait, fun reeling the baits back in. But once I had a good fish on, I do feel like I was limited with the amount of torque I was able to get while reeling. And I feel like you could start to feel the, kind of quote unquote cheapness of this reel, I guess, when it was under stress. The reel does have a little bit of a plasticky feel to it. I don't know if that's just from the lack of bearings or quality of bearings or, some of the internal components. I don't know. Again, if you're looking for like hardcore, piece by piece breakdown and take apart of reels, I'm not your guy. I'm just a guy that likes to go out, use them and tell you what I think of them afterwards in like real world scenarios. But I do know that in the hand, I could tell, especially under stress, that this was a bit of a cheaper reel. And you know what? Sometimes that is okay because at the end of the day, this is a cheaper reel. So it is appropriate that it doesn't feel like a $250 or $300 reel because it's not going to be, and it is not one. But that brings us to our last issue here. Speaking of price, and what was this reel's top selling point to me was its price at $99. I love it. I love that a company said, you know what? We're going to go out there and we're going to win the $99 BFS crowd because I think that lane is wide open right now. And I think the budget angler deserves solid gear that is built to their price point. And I respect the heck out of Ark for putting this reel out at $99. And when I got this reel, it was $99. Yeah, here comes the part that nobody wants to talk about. It's not so great. On the Ark website, as of the time that I am recording this episode, that price has now changed to $119.99. That is a 20% increase, at least through Ark, and this is no longer a $99 reel on the Ark website. Now, if you go to Tackle Warehouse, it's still listed at $99, at least when I'm recording this, but on the official Ark website, it is now listed at $119.99. So basically $120, which means that's the price that it will likely be at retailers soon. If the company itself is showing you a price, then a lot of times the retailers have stock that they bought or they invested in when the price was lower so they can sell it for lower. Once they run through that stock, they're going to have to play by the game here and they're going to have to probably sell these for $120 as well. So if that's the case, if this reel came out at $99 just 1 month ago and now is already hitting us with a price increase, that's BS. I'm sorry, that's lame. You cannot tell me that you released a reel at $99 1 month ago and you didn't know that you would have to tack on a 20% increase in just a few weeks after launching that product. That, to me, and to a lot of other consumers, would feel a bit like a bait and switch. If that's true, and again, capital I, capital F, because I don't know any more than you guys do, I can just look at the website and try and read the tea leaves here. That feels like you released a reel at $99 so you could have a bunch of people excited about a $100 BFS reel, get all the good publicity and the hype around it, and then raise the price. That feels like a rug pull to us as consumers, and that sucks. So I've said this before with other companies as well. Like I said, the same thing about Daiwa and the Tatula cork rods that came out last year at iCast. They debuted those products at one price, and then it felt like as soon as I stepped off the plane when I got home, those prices had jumped, and that sucks. And again, to all of us regular Joes, that looks disingenuous. So I don't know if that's what's happening here. Again, full disclosure, I have no idea, but when I got this reel, it was $99, and a few short weeks later after it hits the market, it is now $119.99. And $20 might not seem like a lot to some of you, but it's a lot to me. If you think $20 won't sway my decision to buy something in the future one way or the other, then you must not know me because I'm a very frugal guy. I watch every penny. And at the end of the day, I think my honest to goodness review of this reel is going to be it's worth $99, but I don't know if it's worth $119. So that might sound harsh, but that's just my opinion because if this reel really is $120 now, for $150, you can get the actual Ark Gravity BFS, the non-Avid version, the non-simplified, non-cheaped down version of this reel, which is the original and more premium option in the Ark Gravity BFS lineup. So for $30 more, you get 0.4 ounces lighter, you get twice the amount of bearings, and it's just a more fine-tunable machine. I think the cheaper Ark Gravity BF Avid is built for simplicity. It was built to hit a price point, even though it looks like that price point might be changing. And the Ark Gravity BFS is a lighter, smoother reel that you can really dial in more so than you can the Avid version. So for $30 more, if this Avid really is going up to $120, then at $149, I think the regular Ark Gravity BFS would probably be my pick, and I think it's worthy of that $30 upgrade because you get so much more. So overall thoughts on the Ark Gravity BF Avid, I would say it's a good reel. I'd say it seems to be a, great, simple, entry-level BFS reel that you could learn on or you could dip your toe into the BFS world without breaking the bank. It casts well, it's light, it's comfortable, but it does leave a little bit to be desired when it's under stress. It lacks some power. You can feel that it is slightly cheaper of a reel. And if it really is going up $20 and putting it out of the $99 price point, then that is a bummer in and of itself. So there it is. There's my honest thoughts on the brand new Ark Gravity BF Avid reel from Ark Fishing. If you want to go check them out, you can head over to www.arkrods.com. That is ARKrods.com. Click casting reels, and you should see that BF Avid right there on that page. Okay, everybody, let's keep moving here. We are going to move into this week's fishing poll here in just a second. But first, the Tackle Talk podcast and the fishing poll are brought to you in part by Humminbird. And today, we are shining the spotlight on Humminbird's Mega Live 2. Now, Humminbird Mega Live 2 live sonar delivers a real-time view with unmatched clarity and detail, giving you, the angler, an instant look beneath the surface to inform every cast. More information means better decision-making. It means more high-target casts, more precise casts, and that's the efficiency boost that Mega Live 2 can give you. You get instant insight into what's going on beneath the surface so you can find fish and structure. I mean, everybody always wants to talk about seeing fish on live sonar, and sure, that can be a part of it, but I love using live sonar to just get a better look at what structure, depth, and features I'm dealing with at any given time. With Mega Live 2, you can clearly see every detail so you can be more confident in how you fish every cast, any condition. And with easy mounting and all-season capability, Mega Live 2 fits into however you like to fish. For more information, you can head over to www.humminbird.com. Humminbird Mega Live 2. Next-gen clarity, next-level fun. The Tackle Talk podcast is also brought to you in part by Minn Kota. And every Minn Kota trolling motor is built to help get you to fish and keep you there so you can focus on what matters most, actually fishing. Holding a spot, navigating contour lines, fighting the wind, Minn Kota can make all of that a breeze with state-of-the-art features and tech. Minn Kota trolling motors are easy to command and deliver season after season dependability. With Minn Kota, unmatched performance, effortless control, and confidence all come standard with every single model. For more information, you can head over to www.minnkotamotors.com. That is minnkotamotors.com. Minn Kota, built to fish.
This is the Tackle Talk Podcast Fishing Poll. Brought to you by Humminbird. Explore more at humminbird.com.
All right, everybody, let's move into the fishing poll here. We have a fun fishing poll question for you all because it is that time of year. July is upon us. We are reaching the dog days of summer, and I want to know what you consider the greatest midsummer bait for largemouth. And I specifically said largemouth bass because I think this answer changes a little bit if you go smallmouth or you go spots. So let's stick right down the middle. Everybody has them for the most part, largemouth. Now, it's like, 90 degrees outside. It's hot. What is your go-to summer largemouth bait? Now, my answer is the same answer probably that I've had if you would have asked me, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I've been pretty darn consistent on this, I think. And my answer is going to be a Magnum curly tail worm. Specifically, if I have to pick one, I would go with the Zoom Old Monster. I think there is just something about a big curly tail worm in the dead of summer that gets bit by largemouth. And I'm talking like 10.5 inches, old school, black or June bug, Zoom Old Monster in the zipper pack. They're like $5.99. They come 9 to a pack. It is like the best money you can spend in the summertime. And I'll stick by that. Dollar for dollar, Zoom Old Monster will get it done. And I just think the magic of the Old Monster, or just the large kind of oversized ribbon tail worm in general, is that it's big enough to be seen and draw attention in deep water where those bass will move to in the dead of summer. So like the middle of your pond, the edge of that drop off of that juicy main lake point, or just like those deep submerged brush piles in the summertime. Big enough to be seen and draw attention, but also subtle enough and wavy enough, I guess, to draw a bite from, kind of less active fish in the middle of summer. And I like dark colors because the deeper the fish are, the darker I just want my bait to be. It's a mental thing for me. When it's deep, I assume that visibility starts to fade. And again, I love relying on contrast versus color itself. I have said that since the beginning of this show, like 7 or 8 years ago, contrast over color. So what I think of is what little light does get down to that depth, I want this to be as strong of a silhouette as possible for them to find. So I don't know if that matters or not, but that's why I pick dark baits to fish in the kind of deep parts of the lake or deep parts of the pond in the summertime. So that's my firm answer. If you're making me pick one bait in the summertime for largemouth, it is a Zoom Old Monster big oversized ribbon-tail worm in black or June bug. And I'm just Texas rigging it with like a 5/0 EWG hook and, a 1/4 ounce to a 3/8 ounce flipping weight, depending on how deep I'm fishing. I'm probably running 15 to 20 pound fluoro, a medium heavy, or sometimes even a heavy casting rod. And I am just ready for them to hit. You kind of have to give them a second because it is a big bait to get all the way in their mouth. You want to make sure they actually have it before you swing on those fish. But when I do swing on that fish with 15 to 20 pound fluoro and a medium heavy or a heavy, I am going to give them the beans. I am ready. I have the gear to do it. Big, oversized worm in the summertime. I am ready once that fish starts running with that big worm to give it just a monster hook set. So that's me, big ribbon tail worm. But half the fun of the fishing pole is seeing what you guys said. So I will edit this together so you guys can't tell, but I'll be back in just a second and I will compile all of the answers from this week's results. So if we look here at the results, it is kind of cool. We basically have a statistical tie. I mean, they're off by like 0.04%. So I'm going to call this a tie. Your top 2 answers are shaky head and jig. So shaky head was technically 0.04% higher. So if you want to crown a true winner, I mean, it's neck and neck, but you have to give shaky head the win, I guess, if we're going by statistics here. And then jig, very, very, very close second. Again, under a percentage point here. Now, jig is almost always going to be a popular answer no matter what season you're talking about. A jig might be the most versatile, most effective lure on the planet. It's just the utility player that you can put at any position at any time, especially when you just say jig. Because a jig could be a football jig, a finesse jig, a flipping jig, a ball head jig, an arky jig, a swim jig. Like the category of jig is just so broad and it can just do it all. I mean, if you ask this question for spring, summer, fall, winter, jig is going to be a popular answer for all 4 seasons. So that doesn't surprise me. What I do find interesting is shaky head. Because it doesn't say worm, it doesn't say Senko, it says shaky head. Shaky head was the #1 answer. So a specific rigging technique for a worm, very specific. I like that you guys singled that out because as we get to the other results here in a second, some things were a little bit more broad, and the fact that shaky head specifically was the #1 answer is cool. Now, listen, I'm a Midwest guy at heart. I love a good shaky head. I throw a shaky head much more than I do a Nico rig. I throw it more than I do a wacky rig. I probably throw it about even with a Texas rig. It's probably close, but I love a good trick worm on a shaky head. Deadly, deadly, deadly. And in summertime, when you're finessing those fish a little bit more, low, clear water sometimes, a finesse shaky head can just get the job done. So I get it. I think that's a fine answer, definitely worthy of your top spot here. Now, as you keep going down, those were our top 2. #3 was frog, which, I mean, yeah, twist my arm, right? Summertime frog fishing. It is the one time of year that I do throw a frog, dead of summer, in the slop. Yes, please. Partly because that's when our cover for frog fishing appears around here. Your ponds and creeks start to moss over. Lily pads are in full bloom. It is just frog city in a lot of places. And there is nothing in fishing, I mean, maybe nothing in the whole world, but definitely nothing in fishing like a frogfish. Like from the initial cast and the plop of that hollow belly on top of the slop to the frog trail that it leaves behind in the weeds as you work it back to you, to that initial gulp of the frog when a fish comes up and eats it. And then you have like the wherewithal where you have to not set the hook immediately and give it a couple seconds before swinging. And then that massive swing of a heavy casting rod, that sound of like the braid tightening on the hook set and that, as you set the hook and that braid snaps through the air. And then just the 4x4 style, down and dirty, cranking of that fish through the slop. It is the best. It's awesome. So frog at #3, I have no qualms about. The number 4 pick here was actually a popper. And I will co-sign that as well. A popper is a huge player for me in the summertime and fall too. As you go down here, number 5 was a glide bait. Depending on where you live, I could see that. We still throw glide baits in the summertime, but I think late summer all the way through late fall is kind of our key window for glides around here. Again, you can catch them on glides right now, absolutely no problem. But like the hot time is probably still a little ways away. Number 5 was a Texas rig. Number 6 is a Nico rig. Number 7 was a large ribbon tail worm of some sort. And there were kind of a couple different ways that people worded that. But, ribbon tail, curly tail, magnum curly tail. So that was number 7, which was my pick. So my number 1 did at least make it to this list on number 7. And then chatterbait was all the way down at number 8, which was interesting. Paddletail swimbait was 9. Senko was 10. And then there was a hodgepodge of things. There was Coikes. There was wacky rigs. See, and here's the problem. I think like wacky rigs, Senko, Texas rig, all of those is that sometimes I think these answers can kind of get split up a little bit. Like I think that there are people that probably say wacky rig and they're using a Senko a lot of times. So, Senko and wacky rig went in this as 2 separate things. But I think sometimes some of these, especially worm related answers, kind of cannibalize themselves a little bit. So it might not be fair to them. I'm going to have to find a way to prevent that in the future, I guess, or word these questions differently. But there was buzz baits, spooks, buzz toads, Ned rigs, flukes, deep crank was on here a couple times. So there's a ton of answers here, but your number 1 and number 2 neck and neck were shaky head number 1 and jig number 2, almost a statistical tie there for your favorite midsummer largemouth lures. Again, maybe not right now when you're listening to this, but probably within the next day or so, next week's fishing poll question will be up on the website. So if you go over to tackletalkpodcast.com/fishing poll, you'll be able to vote for next week's episode. Okay, everybody, let's keep going here. We are about to jump into the mailbag here in just a second. But before we do, as you know, the Tackle Talk podcast and the mailbag are powered by Amped Outdoors. Amped Outdoors is an industry leader in lithium batteries engineered and built for all types of marine applications. It could be your graph, it could be ice fishing, it could be live sonar, your trolling motor, your kayak battery, whatever it is, Amped has a battery for you. With Amped, you get the highest quality components. You get waterproof case designs. With their larger batteries, you get Bluetooth connectivity and heated charging standard. That is a big deal on those 50 amp hour and up batteries. That has been a lifesaver for me, the Bluetooth connectivity for my kayak motor. No longer do I have to just sit there and blindly guess how much battery I have left or try to keep track of it in my mind. No more guessing. I just pull up an app and boom, it tells me the percentage that's left. It is such a godsend. You get all of that plus an industry-leading 10-year no-gimmick warranty and world-class customer support based right here in the United States in Hudson, Wisconsin. So you can head over to www.ampedoutdoors.com today to check out all of their batteries, 12 volt, 24 volt, 36 volt. They got power stations, you name it. If you need to power it, they have a battery for you over at ampedoutdoors.com, and power your passion with Amped.
This is the Tackle Talk Podcast Mailbag, powered by Amped Outdoors, your source for premium, affordable lithium batteries.
All right, our first question here is from Connor, who says, "Hey, Andrew, I'm 19 years old and from Maryland. After a year of grinding, I've finally started to gain some real traction on social media with my account called Coike. And I'm wondering how you were able to build a brand for yourself and what really helped you starting out. It would be an honor to be featured on the mailbag. I'm a massive fan of the show, and I can't tell you how much I've learned. Tight lines, Connor." Well, hey, Connor, man, that's a deep question, I guess, to start out. I probably should have rearranged these instead of starting out with such a big bang here. As far as building a brand for yourself and what helped starting out, you're not going to like this answer, but I actually think the best way to build a brand for yourself is to not consciously try to build a brand for yourself. Because the second you decide to try and build a brand for yourself, you're making a decision to create this persona, this image, this style that you have to follow and protect, and you get away from being yourself. So even if you start out being yourself and being very true to what you like to do, people change over time. So you don't want to pigeonhole yourself into some brand that you make for yourself and then being something the rest of your life that you don't want to be, or trying again to kind of keep up that facade. So to me, building a brand for myself is something that I never really set out to do, and I still don't really set out to do. I mean, I don't know if I would say I have a brand. I don't think I do. I think I'm just me. I think if people like it and like what we talk about on the show, then that's awesome. And we welcome everybody to this Tackle Talk community with open arms. But if it's not your cup of tea, that's totally fine too. But I'm just going to be me. I'm going to talk about what I feel compelled to talk about. I'll give honest opinions on gear and tactics and tips that I find interesting, and, talk to interesting people. And that's really about it. So if that's a brand, that's awesome, I guess. But I definitely don't think of it that way. So the brand part is something that I just don't think of too much. I mean, yes, we have a logo here at Tackle Talk. I have a few fonts that I like to use. I have a, design style just because that's how I make things. And I guess I have some core philosophies that drive how this show goes. And I try my best never to stray away from. So maybe that's more of like what the brand is, those philosophies that I have as a human that I don't want to compromise on. I mean, some examples would be like, I don't use vulgar language on the show because I want everybody to be able to enjoy Tackle Talk. I think cuss words are lazy and distasteful in a media setting. I want to be honest. I want to avoid drama. I want to respect your time and come prepared. And I think that's the stuff that's the most important. I think you need to find your core philosophies and then don't compromise on them. And then the one thing I would say, and the advice I would give you, is that consistency is the other thing that I would really focus on. I mean, if you really want to know why Tackle Talk is still around and why we're doing well, it's because I haven't missed a single Tuesday episode in over 7 years. Like, consistency builds success with whatever you're doing. So if you stay with it, you will be successful. It's just a matter of time. It just, is a matter of whether it takes 6 months to be successful, 6 years to be successful, 15 years to be successful. But if you stick with something, you will find success eventually. Most people don't fail. They just quit too early. So that's my 2 cents there, I guess. Sorry, that was probably a little deeper than most of you want to listen to, but I hope that helps a little bit. Good luck, and we're rooting for you, man. All right, the next question here is from John, who says, "Hey, Andrew, my name is John, and I'm a freshman in high school. I've heard you talk about a lot of different topics on the show, but I've never heard you talk about one of my favorite things to fish for, catfish. I was wondering, what would be your optimal catfishing setup? Mine is the Ugly Stick GX2 spinning combo with 20-pound braid and a lighter mono leader. I finish it off with a circle hook. I love the show and the different guests that you have on. Keep doing your good work. God bless." Oh boy, John. Well, thank you first off for the kind words. I appreciate you listening, and I'm glad you enjoy the show. But man, there's a reason why you don't hear me talk about catfish, because I hate catfish. I am not a catfish guy, especially channel cats. I've caught hundreds and hundreds of catfish in my life. And aside from the, occasional cool looking flathead that I do have a soft spot for sometimes, all the other catfish can just kick rocks. Like, I hate channel catfish. I'm not a blue cat guy. I grew up catching yellow bellies out of the creeks, but I don't like them. And all of that sort of came to a fitting culmination like 2 or 3 years ago when I was fishing with my buddy and I caught a channel cat on a chatterbait. I went to pop out that chatterbait out of that catfish's mouth like you do with a bass, right? Where you bonk it really hard with your inner palm. And that catfish rolled on me right as I went to smack down with like all of my force. And the horn of that catfish went through my hand. I mean, so bad that it severed part of my, I think they called it the ulnar nerve. And it took like almost a year to get control back of my pinky. I lost like the ability to move my pinky in certain directions. And it just kind of sat there almost like dead for the better part of a year. And I still to this day have issues with it, but it's like 90 to maybe 95% on a good day back to what it should be. I've regained most of it back, but it's still not all there. So the nerve damage in my hand was kind of the final straw with catfish for me. So just add it to the long list of reasons why I hate catfish. So I'll be honest, I don't know much about catfish rigging or rod choice. I would say your GX2 spinning combo with 20-pound braid and a circle hook honestly sounds along the lines of what I would probably pick too. I know you don't need much in the way of sensitivity. You just need more brute strength when you're out there catfishing, and an Ugly Stick definitely gives you that at an affordable price point. So circle hooks, chicken liver, live bluegill, cut bait, depending on what type of catfish you're targeting, and have fun. But yeah, more power to you. I'm just not a catfish guy. All right, next question here is from Jason, who says, now that we have had a chance to hear from the big four, I've been thinking about retail tackle shops and those major players. When you look at Bass Pro Shops, Cabela's, Scheels, Reed's, etc., they were a lot of family business shops that found a way to expand beyond the local mom and pop location to become heavy hitters in the retail market. Who are some contenders to be the next major player in the retail tackle field? There are plenty of local shops that will always be single store locations. Just wondering if there are some shops that you are aware of that might have a viable plan to grow and compete beyond the local market where they started. Oh, that's a pretty insightful question, Jason. Thanks for asking that. Yes, I don't know. Yes and no. I think probably it goes both ways. No, I don't think you'll see another Bass Pro or Cabela's or Scheels or Academy, at least not to that scale, because those are brick and mortar chains and they have huge physical footprints. And I think that world is already too crowded, and you're seeing less and less money be spent at brick and mortar stores by the day. The money is now increasingly spent online. Physical stores aren't dead by any means. I mean, they're not like the newspaper or anything, but they're definitely trending down from where they were 10 or 20 years ago in terms of foot traffic, dollars spent, and importance overall. The internet just changed the game on how we buy anything, and fishing gear is no exception to that. So the newcomers that are going to be these major players that you're talking about are going to be in the e-commerce space. And you're already seeing that. You're seeing someone, a great example is like our title sponsor, the Rod Locker. You could look at like an Omnia or a Fish USA. People like that, those companies, from what I know anyway, started out all as local physical shops, but the internet allowed them to be more than that. It let them transform into a national brand that people from all 50 states can order from. And that's the magic of the internet, is I can order from the small mom and pop shop of the Rod Locker, or I can order from the big tackle warehouse, or I can order from Bass Pro Shops, and they all show up to my door the same. So it evened the playing field for these small tackle shops to be instantaneously the same as your big box retailers. So these incredible local tackle shops now are not limited to local customers. And that's where I think you're going to see those next heavy hitters come from. And you're already seeing it. Like I said, I would much rather buy my gear from the Rod Locker, and obviously it's why we've worked with them for the better part of a decade now, because yes, my gear shows up the same, like somebody comes and delivers it, whether I buy it from Bass Pro or Cabela's or whatever, but I can get the same price through Bass Pro Shops as I can through the Rod Locker. But when I order through the Rod Locker, I get that better experience on the customer service side. I get more of a hometown feel. I get someone that I can call if I have questions or, heaven forbid, an issue. I mean, I can tell you right now, if I have an issue with my order at the Rod Locker, I can call the shop, and there's a good chance that Brian or Chad are able to take my call, who own the whole dang shop. If I have a problem with my order at Bass Pro Shops, Johnny Morris is not getting on the phone to take my call no matter how hard I try. So I think that's where the future of the heavy hitters is going to come from. I think as people get a little tired of the big box stores and their shenanigans, and you start shopping even less and less in person, I think that lane just continues to open for those smaller tackle shops to do more e-commerce online. All right, the next question here is from William, who says, hello, I just got 15th out of 70 in my first tournament, but I struggled in the mornings. What are some of your favorite early morning river baits and techniques for smallies? I only used a Ned TRD. Well, hey, William. Okay, early morning river baits for smallmouth. I would say this time of year, topwater for sure. Popper, spook, buzzbait, plopper, your weapon of choice there is going to be fine a lot of times. Just something to target those high percentage areas and see if you can get them up and moving first thing in the morning. Morning and evening are your hot bites for topwater for sure. In the summertime, you can catch them all day long in the right places on topwater, but for sure, early morning, dusk, you can be throwing that topwater anytime now. The other thing I would look at is like a Z-Man Minimax chatterbait. I would say that's a good option. You can throw a little 2 to 3 inch trailer on the back of it, something like a Hog Farmer Spunk Shad. And I'd probably have some sort of paddle tail swim bait on a jig head. It sounds like if you were only throwing a Ned TRD, you had the kind of like finesse-y part down, and that's why you did pretty well in the middle of the day. And you caught enough fish, it looks like, to get 15th out of 70. So you did pretty good during the day. So I would say in the mornings, maybe put the Ned rig down and maybe try something a little bit more aggressive like a topwater or a moving bait. All right, our last question here is from Nick, who says, "Hey, Andrew, I'm currently needing to re-spool my workhorse bait caster, and I'm down to half a spool of fluorocarbon. I have 3 rods that I use, a 7-foot medium spinning for finesse and poppers, a 7.3 heavy for frogging and punching, and a 7.3 medium heavy for jigs, Texas rigs, and almost everything else I throw. I'm currently running 15-pound fluoro on that setup. I have half a spool left, and I was thinking to save money, I might run braid to a fluoro leader with the remaining line that I have there. Can you please explain the pros and cons of going this route? Thanks for all your insight you provide to all your listeners on a weekly basis." Well, thanks, Nick. I appreciate it. And sure thing. For me, I would say in your situation, it's as simple as this. If I'm going to run a leader, then why not just make it my main line and streamline that whole combo and not worry about it? So if I humor you for a second and I say, okay, yes, you are going to use that 15-pound leftover fluorocarbon as a leader, that means that you have to tie a leader and then you have to keep up with it at all times. So you're going to have that knot going through your eyelets. You're going to have to watch for abrasion and weakening of that knot. And then, because it's your Texas rig and your jig rod, you're going to have to direct tie to your bait every time. You're not using a snap in those situations. So every time you switch baits, you have to direct retie and you shrink that leader every single time that you retie because you're eating into that limited leader that you do have until you basically run through that whole leader and then you need to retie a whole nother leader. So then, at least what I do anyway, is I start to overcompensate and I try to make my leader too long in the beginning because I know that I'm going to have to retie, and every time I retie, I'm going to eat into that leader. So I try and make it 15 feet long when it should be 4 feet long because I know once I retie, it's going to get shorter and shorter and shorter. And then I also don't swap out my baits as often as I should because I don't want to eat into that leader and it's just a giant pain. So I would much rather have straight fluorocarbon and just be done with it. But that's just me. You can do whatever you want. If it were me, I would just spend the extra $15 to $20 on whatever fluorocarbon you like to use and just re-spool. That's just me. You can use braid to a leader. You're probably going to get a tad more sensitivity, which I guess is nice because you're using braid, but you're trading that for, in my eyes, a big inconvenience and also potential knot issues through your line guides. And then at the end of the day, another knot, no matter how good you are at tying knots, your leader knot is just one more spot that can fail. So you're adding one more potential weak spot between you and that fish, and I just tend to avoid that on casting gear whenever I can. All right, everybody, that is our episode today. Again, I'm looking at the timer here. I know that was a long one, but hey, it's been 4 weeks since we've done a standard Tackle Talk episode. We had a lot to talk about. Just a quick reminder, the Tackle Talk Retro Smalley Snapback Hats will be live on tackletalkpodcast.com on Tuesday, July 7th at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. It is a very limited drop of them since, I have to buy them with my own money and then I can list them. So these aren't drop ship hats. I have limited inventory because I only have so much money I can spend on hats at a given time, but they are sitting right next to me here in the studio. They look awesome. I cannot wait to finally offer these to you guys again. July 7th, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, tackletalkpodcast.com and click store at the main menu there and it'll take you right to our shop site where you can order them. Again, thank you so much for everybody's feedback on the Big Four. I'm so glad everybody enjoyed it and found it interesting and educational. As always, if you have any questions, you can email me, tackletalkpodcast@gmail.com. You can go to our website, tackletalkpodcast.com. There you can submit a mailbag question for your chance to be heard on an upcoming episode. You can vote in next week's fishing poll, and we will see you guys right back here next Tuesday for another brand new episode of Tackle Talk.
Thank you for listening to the Tackle Talk podcast. Tackle Talk is produced by Andrew Hayes. Copyright 2019. For more, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.